Hey gamers, so over this past weekend, there was a few gaming presentations and I reacted to two of the major big ones I feel, which were the Summer Game Fest and the Xbox Game Showcase thing. And to be honest, I kind of regret watching them. Now, don't get me wrong, there were some good stuff at both of these events, but overall, I just really didn't really care about them and I stayed up, particularly watching the Xbox event, and I did not want to, and it was kind of not worth it in my opinion. And for the Summer Game Fest, I just felt like it dragged on for way too long. But let's talk more about it in detail, shall we? So yeah, let's first talk about the Summer Game Fest, which was 2 hours, and I also watched the Day of the Devs thing, which was like another extra hour. I thought it was gonna be like way less time, like 30 minutes or 20 minutes, but yeah, that event wasn't great. There were only like a few announcements that were like, okay, that's pretty cool. The Scott Pilgrim game, that's really cool to see. I was not expecting that at all. I only played like an hour of Scott Pilgrim versus the World, that game, and I need to continue it. I played it like the day before Christmas, like a few years ago, and I have not gone back to it. So I definitely need to continue it, especially in preparation for this game, which looked really cool. At first, I wasn't sure what it was when they first showed it, but then I'm like, oh my god, that's Ramona or whatever, that girlfriend, right, of Scott. But yeah, it was cool to see that. Very surprising. Now, there was also like some other things that I found kind of interesting. We saw Sonic Cross Worlds or whatever, where we saw Persona make an appearance, along with Yakuza, those characters. Although I learned that they were part of like a season pass thing for people that buy the digital deluxe edition. I thought they were just going to be included when the game first comes out, so that's kind of annoying. But still, I digress. It was cool to see characters from those franchises, along with Hitsuru Miku and Minecraft. Okay. We did not see anything about like SpongeBob, Patrick, or Aang, which was like rumored to be here, but maybe we'll see it in due time. There was that. There was also a puppet fighting game, which looked kind of interesting. There were some other games that I thought like, it didn't look that bad. It looked kind of interesting. But of course, I think the big one people cared about was at the very end, where at first they denied it was happening, which was a big bait and switch, which I actually really like that, where Resident Evil 9 was revealed, and it looked really cool. It looked really cool. I really liked how like they brought in the director or whoever it was for Resident Evil and say like, oh, you just gotta be patient, we'll show off the game eventually. And I thought, okay, that's it. We'll see it like maybe in a few weeks or a few months or something. Nope, we saw it in the same show like a couple minutes later or something. That was really cool. I'm really happy about that. The game looked very interesting. I don't understand. Apparently, there's like rumors that like Leon and some other guy is gonna be here from the past Resident Evil games, even though we didn't see them in the trailer. I don't think that's true. At the very least, I don't think they're gonna be like main characters. That's like the rumor. Which that's a whole thing. A lot of both of these events were plagued with rumors, and I kind of felt like that deflated like the reveals in my opinion. But it's like you can't ignore rumors, especially if you are following games. It's like impossible. But hey, they kind of did a bait and switch, even though it was like rumored, we would see it. They kind of said, oh no, it's not happening. So it's kind of cool that they did that, so it's kind of like lowered our expectations, so they brought it back higher for at least Resident Evil in particular, not the other games, but probably the game that mattered the most, objectively speaking, to the most people. I can commend them. But yeah, overall, the Summer Game Fest was kind of boring. There were, again, some good stuff here and there. And then the Day of the Devs, I thought actually was better overall for like most of it than the Summer Game Fest. I felt like it had more consistent games, more unique looking games. That's a big problem with Summer Game Fest. And also the Xbox Showcase, which we'll talk about in a bit. It had a lot of games that look very similar to each other. A lot of Souls-like games, a lot of anime games. In fact, when I did a reaction to it, they showed off like 4 or 5 anime games back to back, and I thought they were all the same game. Like, I thought they were Hawkeye, Star Rail, or Genshin Impact or something. Nope, it was like 5 or 4 different games back to back to back, and it was like, okay. It just had a lot of similar looking games. But the Day of the Devs thing, I thought was pretty cool, until like the last like 5 minutes or whatever, where they did like a singing thing, and then like they said, "Oh, thank you for supporting us," and then they talked about their sponsors. Like it was weird. I don't know what was that. Like I feel like that could have been a quick like 1 minute thing at most. Um, and then it was weird, especially because they confirmed the time of how long the Summer Game Fest was going to be, but they did not talk about how long the Day of the Devs thing was going to be. And then they also, for some reason, they also didn't say like it was going to continue on after Day of the Devs for the solo directing, which I did not watch at all. I did not care. For like some sort of game, because before it seemed to be like its own separate stream. It does say the Day of the Devs was part of the same Summer Game Fest stream, but that's not what happened. So I don't know what's going on. Why didn't they communicate that well? And that's another thing where I feel like over this weekend they didn't communicate well in terms of, you know, the length of these presentations. That's what they did for the Xbox showcase as well. It was like rumored it might be like an hour, but it wasn't confirmed. I feel like we should have confirmation. Okay, it's gonna be like roughly an hour, roughly 50 minutes, 40 minutes, you know, just so we could get like a estimation of how long we're gonna be there, because especially for the Summer Game Fest, that felt exhausting to just stay there and watch the entire time when I wanted to go eat some food, because I thought it was only going to be 2 hours and maybe like 30 minutes for the Day of the Devs thing. Nope, it was like 3 hours, and I think longer than that, because I started a bit early and I ended off a little bit later because of talking about it. So yeah, I feel like they could have communicated that better. Overall, you know, Summer Game Fest, not great. You know, it was my first time watching that event. I watched the Game Awards before, and I kept calling it the Game Awards when I did the live reaction stream. But the Game Awards are way better than the Summer Game Fest. Not by much, but it is better. It's kind of sad that this replaced E3, but, you know, maybe they'll make it better next time. I don't know. But now let's talk about the Xbox event that happened as I'm recording this today. I set an alarm to watch it. I was tired, and it was not worth staying up for. Now, I've seen a lot of people say they actually like this more than Summer Game Fest, or even complimenting both, saying Summer Game Fest was also move fast-paced, along with the Xbox thing. They kind of did move fast-paced. I do like that. You know, they went from one game to another for the most part. Although there was still a lot of downtime, you know, with the Summer Game Fest. There was like some ads, there was some talking, there was like Hideo Kojima showed up, and he just showed a clip of Death Stranding 2, even though it did have its own presentation Sunday as well today. Again, as I'm recording this, so that was kind of unnecessary. But the Xbox showcase had like less of that, but still, I feel like it can be matched to like a Nintendo Direct, where it's really just fast-paced, go on and go on. Heck, even the PlayStation events that happened, the State of Play, which I'm not talking about here, even that, what I felt was more better paced, you know? In fact, I feel like the State of Play was a better presentation than both of these combined, the Summer Game Fest and the Xbox showcase thing. Now, I do think probably the Xbox thing wins out in terms of announcements, but like barely. And to be honest, I think part of the reason why I feel like it dragged on more than other people's, because they kept saying world premiere, or they kept having text that said, you know, playable on Game Pass, or playable on Xbox Play Anywhere, you know, over and over again. And I feel like that was not necessary at all. They should have had like a hashtag in the corner of these announcements, you know. The only time that I thought it was kind of funny was when they randomly said, like towards the end, world effing premiere, you know. I don't know what game it was, but that was pretty funny, not unexpected, but still, like, don't have that really, you know. It should just be a hashtag. But anyway, let's continue on talking about this event. The Xbox showcase. Well, we got some stuff that I just did not care about. They showed off a game that was like, I should also preface this to say that I'm not talking about all the games that were announced in these events, and I'm not going point by point like a Nintendo Direct, because I just don't care. But yeah, the first thing that kind of caught my eye, where it was like a really long trailer. I don't know why they spent so long on this game, but it was like a steampunk aesthetic game, which looked very boring. But then at the very end, they revealed it had something to do with time travel, and it got kind of interesting. But like, it took so long for it to get kind of interesting. This game, I don't know what was the deal with that. There was another game that was like a power wash simulator slash adventure slash horror mystery game or something. It looked kind of cool. I thought that looked kind of cool. High on Life 2 was revealed here, which I don't care, but at the same time, I do find it interesting that it was revealed a little bit after the game was ported to Switch. So that's kind of funny. I've noticed that like being a trend lately where the games that have been announced to come to Switch get like sequels, I feel. I don't know if that's just me, but I've been noticing that lately. There's also Super Meat Boy 3D, which I thought was pretty hype, not gonna lie. Nice to see a new Super Meat Boy game. Need to still finish the original. And I also have Super Meat Boy Forever. I need to do that too. But it's nice to see the series return, you know? It looks pretty cool. I kind of like how they had the Mario pipe in it. I was like very confused for a second. And then there was also, of course, the Persona 4 remake reveal. It's called Persona 4 Revival, which first of all, I really don't like that name. I feel like they should have gone with Persona 4 Rewind or Persona 4 Rerun. You know, the Revival just doesn't fit, in my opinion. I know all of them have to do with like TV stuff, but I feel like the other two I mentioned would have been perfect. But I digress. The second point is just the fact that, again, I don't think we need this. So fun fact, I was thinking about making a video for this game in particular, but they didn't show anything about it. They just said, it exists. Here you go. It almost feels like, yeah, like they put together a trailer after what happened last week with the Yuri guy that played Yosuke. I made a video talking about that, but there was also two other voice actors for Chie and Yukio or whatever, where they said they weren't also in the remake. So it was kind of weird. It kind of felt like a response, like this trailer, like, okay, it's real, shut up, we're still working on it, you know? After I guess the voice actors accidentally leaked it happening or whatever. But yeah, it just felt very unfinished, this trailer. They didn't really show anything about it, you know? And my point from that video and what I would have done if they did a full-on reveal was that, yeah, they don't need to remake Persona 4 at all. Persona 4 Golden is good the way it is. It was barely brought over to modern consoles like only like 3 years ago or something, compared to Persona 3, which was brought over around the same time, but it was the portable version, which was the lesser version, you know, not the FES version, so I kind of felt like the remake made more sense there. But, you know, I'm repeating the same points, you know, that's just my main argument. Although, I will admit, the environments they showed off did look kind of cool to be, like, a more advanced over-the-shoulder 3D than it was in Persona 4 Golden. And when they did play that music, it was emotional, you know, the main theme. But still, like, we don't need a remake. We should get a remake of Persona 1, Persona 2. Please, please, Atlas, Sega. Oh my god. Man, I'm kind of worried they're gonna remake Persona 5 now, you know. Hopefully not for, like, a long while, but knowing Atlas and Sega. But yeah, that sucked. And that was the main reason I stayed up for this event. That was like one of the biggest rumors, you know, which is another problem with these things. There was like lots of rumors about like, yep, this is happening. But even then, it wasn't like a big reveal, and it was not worth staying up for. But, you know, I digress. There's still other stuff that was announced, like they announced finally Final Fantasy VII Remake and Final Fantasy 16 are coming to Xbox. In fact, 16 is already out right now on Xbox, if you want to check that out. I need to continue that game. You know, I'm almost done with it on PlayStation, but I still have a few hours left. But yeah, it's a great game. Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's cool to finally get on Xbox after being like, 5 years, after it first came out on PS4. It sucks that it's coming out way later than Final Fantasy 16. It also sucks that they're not on Game Pass, but, whatever. Square Enix kind of doesn't like Game Pass. Compared to at least Sega and Atlas, which seems to love Game Pass with Microsoft, which I forgot to mention, Persona 4 Revival is going to be on Game Pass. So, I will check out the game. but I'm not excited for it. But anyway, going back to the other games. They also did a reveal at the very end, which was Call of Duty, and it looked interesting until they sold the title, and then I lost every interest I had. I just don't care about Call of Duty at all. It sucks. It's the same thing again and again. Every year, please take a break along with the other yearly stuff like Madden, like 2K. Like, come on. I don't care at all. Like, it looked kind of interesting, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, but then they saw the title, and then nope. I'm out. Oh my god, that was something. Also, after that reveal, there was a showcase thing for Outer Worlds, and I think also Grounded 2. Although they didn't mention Grounded 2 because it was a reveal here. Which, by the way, they revealed Grounded 2. I did not care because I played like 20 minutes of the first Grounded and I did not like it at all. So maybe I need to give it more of a chance, but yeah, I did not care about Grounded 2. But yeah, they did have that for mostly Outer Worlds, like the sequel. And they had a trailer at the beginning of this as well, of the Xbox showcase, and I just didn't care. That's basically my point, with these presentations. I did not care. There was some good stuff, and I think the Xbox Showcase was better than the Summer Game Fest, and I think both of them had some good stuff. And I think in terms of things that I was interested in were better than, say, like the PlayStation State of Play. But I think the State of Play was actually a better structured presentation. But of course, nothing could top a Nintendo Direct. Those things, it's just game after game after game. There's something for everybody. The Summer Game Fest had a lot of stuff like anime games, a lot of Souls-like games, the Xbox showcase thing. It had like reveals, but it didn't really show a lot. And that's like a problem with Xbox in general. They reveal stuff and then like we don't see it for like years. We've seen this with like the Perfect Dark remake, or is it a new game? I don't know. It's something to do with Perfect Dark. There's also like the Fable game that's supposed to be coming, like a new one. We haven't seen that in a while. Like, that's just like my main problem with these events. PlayStation has it better, but it's still not great compared to a Nintendo Direct. Since there's like barely any first party games, like where's the first party games with Sony? But we're not talking about that presentation. Just my overall point is, and it's clear that nothing can top a Nintendo Direct, and I'm not just saying that, because I'm a Nintendo fan. I've grown to really like stuff like Xbox and PlayStation, their games, and being objective as possible. And it's just not as good. I'm sorry, it's not. I also can't help but feel a bit misleaded in terms of stuff like the Summer Game Fest. They said, oh, we have all these partners like the Switch 2. I thought that meant, Nintendo wasn't going to show up here, but I thought it meant, we would see the Switch 2 logo a lot. And we only saw it like twice. Like I don't know. And we saw like the Switch 1 logo like once. And then we also saw the same thing for Xbox. Where the heck are the games for Switch 2 or Switch 1, from Xbox? Where's the Gears of War E-Day or Gears of War Reloaded or whatever? Where's Sea of Thieves? Where's Hi-Fi Rush for Switch or Switch 2? We did not see any of that. Or to bring it back to Persona, where is Switch 2 logo for Persona 4 Revival? Why is Atlas and Sega skipping the Switch and Switch 2? They should have put Metaphor and Persona 3 Reload on, Switch 1. I feel like could have run Persona 3 Reload, but maybe it was too weak, whatever. But at the very least, Switch 2, why wasn't it their release day? Like, what's going on? We just saw a lot of PS5 logos, but no Switch logos, except like one time, I think for Tony Hawk, which we already knew was coming to Switch. And I don't think we saw any Switch 2 logos at all. I don't know. I just kind of feel like, in my opinion, that these events were not great. A lot of people seem to really like the Xbox thing. And I've seen some more mixed stuff for the Summer Game Fest, but I still seen like, it was overall, they went quicker than other times. But like, I still feel like, they weren't that good, to me. It just had a lot of problems with spending too much time on either a particular game or a particular genre of games. Like, just to show you guys that I am not like completely biased. You know, if it was a game that I was very interested in, I would still feel like they showed it too much. In fact, I did feel that way for the Nintendo E3 thing for 2018. You know, Nintendo Directs have been pretty good, but there are, of course, some issues in some of them, and 2018 was no exception. You know, that Direct had 20 minutes of other stuff and 20 minutes of Smash Ultimate, and I did not like that at all. I was interested in the game because it's Smash and, you know, has stuff like Mario, Splatoon, you know, a lot of different franchises I liked. But I just felt like they spent way too much time on it instead of doing it like a separate thing. So, like, you know, separate Smash Direct, where if you wanted to see more, you can see more. If you didn't, you could just tune out. And, you know, that's what Xbox is with the Outer Worlds. You know, if you wanted to see more of that game, then you can. But I didn't care, so I left. And I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is when they spend too much time on, like, again, that game where it was like a steampunk time travel aesthetic, although it was revealed to be time travel, like, way too late. I just think that even if I was interested in that game, I just would have felt like it was too long, you know? They should have just had this as a separate thing, you know? Am I making sense to you guys? I hope I am. Oh yeah, and then also in like the Xbox thing, there was a Pokemon ripoff yet again. I thought it was Power World. Nope, it was something else. So I wonder if Nintendo will go after them too. I kind of hope they do. Is that bad? Oh, and there was also a thing by Game Freak, which is weird. I know Game Freak makes, you know, not Pokemon or even Nintendo games sometimes, but it's still weird to see a game that actually looks kind of decent. Although I did see some frame rate drops, at least people talked about that, but it still looked better than, like, you know, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Oh, and there was also a new game by Donut, who are the original developers of Life is Strange in collaboration with another studio, I believe. To be honest, I didn't really care about it. Although, because it's a Donut game and it's coming to Game Pass, I am interested. The music sounded very Donut-y. Does that make sense? But yeah, it sounded very much like them. But overall, I didn't really see any, you know, interesting stuff. But, you know, I'm willing to check it out because I love Life is Strange. But yeah, I'm sorry I forgot to mention these games earlier. I just thought of them off the top of my head right now. So I guess there's some more interesting stuff in the Xbox Game Showcase than, you know, Summer Game Fest than I initially thought. But still, overall, it was not worth watching these events. I wish I would have taken my time and just looked at the announcements on like Reddit or Twitter, because it was not worth watching them for 3 hours of Summer Game Fest or staying up for the Xbox thing. He just had so many issues for my liking. Not even to mention, I forgot to mention this, the audio balancing, at least for the Summer Game Fest, was very off. Like, I kept having to lower and raise the volume because, like, when they were talking, it was, like, lowered, and then some game reveals were lower, but then some other ones were really high in terms of volume. I don't know what was up with that. So, Jeff Keighley, please fix your Summer Game Fest for next year with all of these issues, at least in my opinion, that you have. But anyways, let me know if you guys agree, or do you think, oh my god, these were like the best events ever. They were way better than the PlayStation State of Play, or way better than Nintendo Directs. Like, in general, like, Nintendo Directs are overrated. But if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, play some Xenoblade, and I'll catch you all next time for more. Peace. Bye, everyone.